Good evening and a very, very warm welcome, literally and figuratively speaking, from Emmen, Drenthe, the Netherlands. Welcome to our blockchain lab. My name is Adrie Wisman and I will be hosting this live stream in the next hour and 15 minutes with lots of blockchain news, technology, guest speakers. So I hope you'll enjoy this. For those of you who have never been to our meetups, let me introduce us a little bit. BlockchainLab Drenthe is a non-profit foundation with the goal to spread knowledge, experience and insight concerning distributed ledger technologies, blockchain in general. Let me get my presentation. We do that by organizing meetups. We do it by spreading the word at technical universities, giving guest lectures, presentations for a local government. We recently did a presentation at the IT Hub in Hogeveen. So lots and lots of things are going on. And what we also do is projects, programming, apps, blockchain applications ourselves. So we gain experience in handling different kinds of blockchains. We are part of Interreg project Bling, which stands for Blockchain in Government, and which is a European project concerning 14 partners in 6 North Sea region countries. And partners you could think of are universities like University of Gothenburg, Edinburgh, Oldenburg, Ho West in Belgium, that kind of institutions, but also the city of Groningen, the municipality of Emmen, the province of Drenthe, the CGIB, that's the judicial money collecting agency. So there are lots and lots of different stakeholders within Bling. You probably have seen our Bling sign here in our lab all the time. Let me go back. We are sitting here in our studio, but we would love to hear from you. Now, you can see me, you can hear me, but I cannot see you or hear you. But we can communicate by using the chat function of YouTube. So if you have anything to ask, if you have any remarks, please use the chat function of YouTube. I will get your message in the studio and we can interact. Of course, when you're looking at this later on, when we're not live, that doesn't work anymore. Okay, let me go on. Every meetup has 3 segments. The first segment is what I will do. It is called What's Going On in the Blockchain Space. In that segment, I will talk about some price action, what's going on in markets, but also what's going on in technology, in news, in government, everything concerning new things in the blockchain world in general. But also CBDCs, and this evening I will be talking about Binance a lot. Also one recurring part of that segment is scams, not because we like scams, but we want to educate people what to look for, what happens in that world, and get some misconceptions out of the way. Our second segment this evening is a guest speaker, Harmens van der Kooi, and he will be talking about blockchain and mobility. He is the blockchain, Dutch Blockchain Coalition blockchain lead for mobility. And he has a lot of exciting examples of how you can use blockchain, how blockchain is used already in mobility. Because lots and lots of people think that blockchain is DeFi, but there is so much more happening in that world. And he is going to show us a few things along the way. He will share his screen with us and show a few websites, the data marketplace, etc. Our third segment will be held by Jeroen Wester. And Jeroen is a co-founder of BlockchainLab Drenthe, a very good colleague of mine. And he will be talking about the BlockchainLab Drenthe itself. How we have evolved and what happened in the last 6 years that we have been organizing these meetups for you and of course for us. So he will do a retrospective of these meetups and our development. So without further ado, I would like to go to our first segment, what's going on in the blockchain space, and I have to push a few buttons to do that. Here we go. Okay, what's going on in the blockchain space is a segment that I always start with looking at price action, right? Never a dull moment in the markets. So lots of people are doing lots of things. Price action is going on. And you're probably hearing an alarm going off right at the moment. So one moment, please. Okay, that was the first in 6 years. So I shut down the alarm in the studio and we're back. So if we look at price action, we see this picture where Bitcoin and Ethereum have been going up. Bitcoin is a little bit over 30,000 and that makes a lot of people smile. And I have some information about that. Comparing to the 1st of January, where Bitcoin was at 16,650 euros. Yeah, well, and Ether is at 1,200 euros. You can see that they have now significantly risen to higher levels. And to be precise, Bitcoin has gone up 84.5%. That's why you see a lot of people smiling from ear to ear. Ether has not risen that much, and that's especially last month, where they the last 2 months they've been going down, and Bitcoin has risen and Ether not. And I'll show that in a chart also. This is the chart of our last meetup in April, where Bitcoin already went up nearly 79%. And now you can see that it has been going down a little bit in April, but there is a sudden rise in price action. So they are at 84.5% plus. How is that for some return on investment? Now, here you can see the difference, right? Where Bitcoin has gone up in the last few weeks, Ether hasn't. And it's even turning down a little, where all of the people say that Ether has a big problem rising above 2,000 euros, $2,000, sorry, while the same resistance level at Bitcoin is around the 30,000. but it has broken. So a lot of people are pretty bullish on Bitcoins and hoping that that will rise. I will talk about that in a moment also, because lots and lots of more people are opting for getting their salaries paid in Bitcoins. Okay, let's go up to the news. And of course, next to blockchain, AI has been booming in news, and there has been a lot of controversy around that. And one of the things why I am talking about that is because lots of people are suggesting using blockchain and AI together, and using the blockchain to secure the rights, the intellectual property of the data which the AI uses. And exactly that is what is happening at the moment. ChatGPT and other models are under attack. They are being sued. In Europe, there's already laws and regulations being made. In America, it's a little bit less dramatic. But as you can see, here is a lawsuit in California where 16 parties got together and issued a lawsuit to OpenAI for breaching privacy and breaching intellectual property rights. And that's where blockchain could come in to save the day, right? You could use blockchain to secure the intellectual property rights and getting paid for using the data, which is on the internet, for instance. So AI would not be free to use that information. So very relevant. I think that blockchain might have a very big role to play in AI or in cooperation with AI. This is what I mentioned earlier. More and more people are opting to get their salaries paid in Bitcoins, and especially freelancers. There has been a sharp increase from only a few percent 2 years ago to up to 17% the last year. So freelancers, especially freelancers, but also here in the Netherlands, there is this option. For instance, I believe it was Domino's who introduced it, the pizza bakers, that their employees could get a piece of their salary paid out in cryptocurrency. But the people are more and more opting for that because of the economic instability, the high inflation rates, etc. So especially in countries, of course, where the economics are less stable than in our country, they are all very interested in getting Bitcoins instead of euros, or instead of other currencies, let's say in Eastern Europe. So all that is also feeding demand for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, which I think is positive for the cryptocurrency world, for price action at least. On some lighter notes, here you see some information about crypto mining. This is a company in New York, in Brooklyn, where they are using Bitcoin mining machines to heat a spa, right? In order to be more environmentally friendly, they used Bitcoin miners who generate heat, which normally has to be cooled and will use even more energy. Use these miners to heat the spa, the swimming pool, etc. In an environmentally friendly way. But America wouldn't be America if people would not complain about that. I would say it makes mining a little bit more green than average, but these people are now complaining and they are opting to stop going to that spa because they want to use clean energy instead of dirty energy. I don't know if they don't use miners, but only coal to generate electricity. If that would be better, if that would be clean energy, right? But I think it's a little bit over the top, but that's America. Here in Holland, we've been doing that a long time. Here you see a Bitcoin miner in a greenhouse here in Holland. There is a company called Bling, and they are putting miners in greenhouses to heat up the greenhouse so the energy isn't lost but is used in a good way. So the miners are paying for the energy, and instead of heating up the planet directly, they are looking for using the energy to grow raspberries or flowers or whatever. And it's good for the prices of the things that are grown in these greenhouses. So we've been doing that a long time, and I haven't heard here in Holland of people complaining that they want their vegetables grown with green electricity instead of dirty electricity. I don't know. I don't see the difference. Only in America. And then we get to Binance. Now, take out your popcorn, because Binance is better than Netflix. You'll see a lot of things happening all around the world with this company. And remember, I've got a few slides about this. All the slides I will present you about Binance have happened the last week, or 90% of it has been happening the last week. So it's a lot of turbulence around Binance. And well, here we start. In Australia, the government has said, well, we don't want companies like that. What we'll do is we'll cut off the exit ramp and the on-ramp to Binance. You are not allowed to have a bank account here in Australia anymore. So, like I said, cutting them off. And the details of that are that it was a 24 hours notice, but that was 1 minute before midnight. So they had around 12 hours to comply to that news. So that's pretty hard on them. The government has decided to more or less kick them out of the country by cutting off their bank account. But the government itself says, okay, we see that might not be the solution, because if we debank companies like that, they will probably go underground, right? We will not eradicate crypto by just saying, well, you cannot buy Bitcoin through your bank or whatever. So they see that there is a negative side like that also, but it's the only way they've got, right? Regulations are getting tougher, also here in Europe. And well, Binance has had its problems in Europe also. But this, in my case, this is something like a quote that Mahatma Gandhi used. First they ignore you, they did. Then they laugh at you, these virtual coins. Then they fight you like this, and then you win. I don't think you can eradicate Bitcoins. So by doing this, I do not think that Australia will save the day for them. They will not turn around. They will not let people be less interested in buying Bitcoins. I only think that they are generating more and more interest and more publicity around this. Yeah, well, maybe you're from Holland like I am. Binance already signaled all their clients that they are leaving our country. They were not able to get a license, and that's why they sent everybody a message that they are leaving the Netherlands on the 17th of July. But not only the Netherlands, also Belgium, they had problems. The regulators said you have to stop doing business here because you do not comply to the licenses. And even in France, they are under investigation. So lots of things happening for Binance, and not only in the Netherlands, Belgium, and France, even in Germany. This week, Binance applied for a license for selling a crypto custody service, and it was declined. So yeah, lots and lots of turbulence. They are not getting any feet on the ground in Germany also. And the bank that supported them, that swapped, that provided their liquidity in euros, said, I'm not going to play with you anymore. You have to look for a different bank if it comes to euros. So they are losing in a lot of countries the trust by the government. Not in every country, because if you see here in UAE, United Arab Emirates, they are welcomed. And they are, Binance is focusing on the Emirates to expand their business there. Right? They found this table, who owns the most crypto in the world, and citizens of UAE, 27% of them own crypto. Next to that is Vietnam, Singapore, etc. So they think it's logical to go and focus on the Emirates, and they don't like what's going on in the States and don't like what's going on in Europe. So they're leaving there. All these regulations are getting tougher, not only on Binance, right? Here you see Mr. Panetta from the ECB in an official talk being very, very negative about blockchain and cryptos. He said, well, it has no benefits to society, and it takes a lot of energy, and it's based on nothing. So he's been very negative about crypto. And then he said, by the way, we are starting our own crypto. So first you are very negative, and then you are starting your own. It sounds a little bit like China to me, right? A few years ago, China kicked out all the Bitcoin miners, made them illegal, and then said, well, we're starting our own digital yuan. And more or less is that what is happening in Europe, where the ECB says, oh, crypto is very bad and it has no societal benefits. I can name a few. We did a project with societal benefits, distributing relief money to people with energy financial problems surrounding paying their energy bills. That has societal benefits, right? We used a very energy-friendly, energy-efficient blockchain called IOTA. I am very curious how much energy the digital euro will cost. Because it might be even more than Ethereum 2.0 or IOTA. So yeah, lots of signals going off, lights flashing, and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, they are going on with the digital euro, right? So we're going to do the redesigning because there isn't much yet. There are plans for the digital euro, but it's going to take a few more years, where China already has its CBDC and all kinds of other countries have their CBDC. In Europe, it's going very slow. And but they are designing this digital euro, which every citizen around the world could use, could buy, etc. But cryptos are bad. Now, England, United Kingdom are working on the digital pound, the Britcoin, so to speak, instead of Bitcoin, the Britcoin. And what they are looking at is not something which is blockchain based. They are designing their own. They are looking at different technologies, but There is, of course, the concern about privacy. So they are designing a Bitcoin which is privacy centered, because they have seen that's the biggest concern with CBDCs, that the government can see all your transactions and even stop your transactions if they would want to. So England is working on their CBDC and they're making good progress, is what they say. Switzerland is starting their test with their CBDC, and they're doing it not on retail basis but on wholesale basis. So large companies, large brokers can have a digital version of their currency, and they are starting with it now. It's not a big pilot, it's real money, it's not a test phase anymore. So you see there, Europe is designing, Britain is making steps, Switzerland is already testing. So lots and lots of things happening in Europe. Here starts our next segment about crypto scams. Now, a recent report has written that in 2022, $7.8 billion were scammed in the crypto world by Ponzi and pyramid schemes. Now, there's a little distinction. So I'm not saying that they are scammed by ransomware, etc. Those scams are separately counted. That's 2.7 billion or something. No, this is Ponzi and pyramid schemes. These are people that are investing in a fund with high returns, almost too good to be true. No, it's really too good to be true. So these people are voluntarily giving their money, putting their money in a fund which makes a lot of promises and never delivers. So that's a different type of scam, which is much bigger than the scams everybody is hearing about on the news, right? Where some bloke behind a terminal seizes $600 million from a smart contract or whatever. Right? This is people who want to get rich quick and lose their money along the way. 7.8 billion. So be warned. If it looks too good to be true, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Here's something we've been talking about for a long time. And it's a report from TRM Labs. Bitcoin is no longer the crypto of choice for illegal activities. We've been talking about it, and you'll probably also know that Bitcoin is absolutely not anonymous. We always talked about it. It was pseudonymous, right? Your name is not known, but since you use the same addresses and since there are Bitcoin explorers, you can see where the money is coming from and where it's going to. So you are far from anonymous. And there are companies like Chainalysis who make a living out of that by mapping which address belongs to which person. So that somehow got to the crooks too, and most of the illicit activities are being done in coins like Tron. Now there are privacy coins, you know them, Monero, Dash, privacy coins on which it is absolutely impossible to see who did which transaction, only that there was a transaction. But those privacy coins have a bad reputation in the upper world. If somebody owns Monero, then everybody thinks, yeah, right, we know why. Right? And if you own Tron, that's less suspicious. So there has been a shift from Bitcoin to Ethereum to Tron for doing these illicit transactions. And here you can see in these graphs that there has been a big shift. For instance, in 2016, nearly all transactions which were illegal were done in Bitcoin. Now only a very small percentage. Hacks nearly no hacks have been reported in Bitcoin in 2022. And also, terrorist financing was in 2016, because nobody knew how transparent Bitcoin was nearly 100%, and now it's only a small part in Bitcoin. So even the crooks are stepping out of Bitcoin because you're known to the legal departments. Then this is, I believe, my last slide before I go to some questions. There is some news. Like I started this meetup, we are a part of Interreg project Bling, Blockchain in Government. That is a project that has been going on for 4.5, 5 years now, because we got an extension because of COVID. But it is coming to an end. And that end is tomorrow. Today is the 29th, tomorrow is the 30th of June, and the Bling project will end there. But the good news is all the experiences, all the knowledge gained from these projects, from all these partners, is written in a book. The blockchain book, and where you can read about all the experiments that have been done, all the conclusions that have been written down. Of course, our energy knip is in there, the self-sovereign tendency app is in there, but also the other projects from the universities and the other partners are in there. The good news is it's free. I've put a link to the PDF in the description, the YouTube description, so you can click on it. It's a book of 150 pages. It's very readable. And it's very nice to see what governmental bodies and universities are doing, on which level they are doing it in the blockchain space. So please use the link and get yourself the PDF. It's a nice read for a Sunday morning. This is the last slide. We got into the Interreg yearbook, where our project, the self-sovereign tendency app and the energy knip, were both chosen to represent Bling. There are more and more projects, of course, in Interreg, not only blockchain in government, but we're on the page in the yearbook, in the project book. So it's quite a big honor, I think. Yeah, that was the last slide. So this will end the segment. Let me check on the questions. I've seen some come by. Let me see. There is Gert-Jan. He says, I think all the regulator cutoffs are not good for the industry. Why is it not possible to talk with the exchanges and find a solution together? I'm absolutely concur. They are scared. And I think they got the wake-up call when Mr. Zuckerberg started his Libra, and they got scared because it was possible that a cryptocurrency would get bigger than the euro or other currencies. So that was a wake-up call, and they prohibited that and said, well, we're going to come to our own cryptocurrency in the market, which I don't see the benefits for the digital euro. But instead of talking to the market and to the exchanges and having them bend their way of work, complying to the rules, they just shut them down, leave. They are very in a very high ivory tower overseeing the market. Let me see, it looks like they want to break instead of finding a solution. What about the new meme coin introductions where you can join pre-sale? I think there are also sort of scams for the launcher to get quick rich. You're absolutely right. Be very, very cautious with new introductions. You don't know anything, and it could be a scam. Not always, but most of the time. It's a get rich quick scheme for the guys who own it and who do the introduction. Why was Bling stopped? Well, all the European projects have a certain time. And normally these projects are 3 or 4 years. So it was started in this case 5 years ago, because we got an extension because of COVID. But that was the end date. That is set. They have a budget, they have to spend it, they have to deliver lots of things. We delivered quite a few apps, research, etc. All of the partners had to deliver a lot of things which are in the book, but not only in the book, right? Lots of these projects are open source, so you can find where you can get involved and work with that further. But the parties involved, the city of Groningen, the province of Drenthe, they will stop working under the flag of Bling. They will not stop using blockchain. They will do on their own, right? Here, for instance, in the municipality of Emmen, they have reserved 150,000 euros alone for this year to work on blockchain without Bling, post Bling, so to speak. So there's a lots of things going on, and Bling, the Interreg Bling project, was more or less a starter for all these different parties to get involved into blockchain. Okay, let me see. Are there any other questions? No, there are not. Then let me go to the next segment and go to Harmen. And in the next segment, we always have an interview with somebody from the blockchain world. And in this case, I'm very happy, very privileged to have Harmen van der Kooi visiting us and telling about what he's been doing up in the blockchain world until now. Let me get him on screen. Yeah. Hello, Harmen.
Hi.
Hello. Nice to have you on board for this session. I've been meeting you on and off in the last few years on all kinds of conferences. I know who you are, but the audience doesn't. So would you please introduce yourself to them?
Sure. Well, thanks, Ali, and thanks for having me, of course. But I'm Harmen van der Kooi, and I'm 51 years old, and I work for the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. And as part of the team, I'm leading the mobility track. So I'm kind of mostly focusing on how can you apply decentralized technologies for the sake of the future of mobility, let's put it that way. And that's super interesting. And can tell all about it.
Yeah, it's super interesting because I think, well, I'm not exaggerating when 95% of the people in this space, people that you meet in the blockchain space, are from a cryptocurrency or DeFi background, and we nerds, now you know how I would categorize you. We nerds, we look a lot broader in the spectrum. We see all these people talking about apes and NFTs, etc., but we see all these other applications of blockchain, and the thing we have been seeing up till now is only a few percent. So I'm super curious about the mobility applications and what has already been deployed or what's going to be deployed in your world. So I'm going to put you on the big screen, and please enlighten us, inspire us, show us what you've been doing.
Yeah, so I was planning to show a couple of things because indeed I think examples always are the best ways to also discuss these kind of things. But I think in general, I mean, the whole idea is that in my case, I look at mobility, but for instance, another colleague is looking at healthcare and somebody at energy. But in this case, mobility, nobody connects blockchain with mobility, right? What the heck? But of course, at least from my perspective, I think blockchain should be something maybe almost invisible, right? So you don't necessarily need to see it. And that also makes it just a piece of the puzzle. So there are a lot of things. So before I switch to my browser screen, just explaining a bit of kind of the scope, what you could think of. So mobility is about all kinds of different things. It's going from A to B. So on the one hand, it's of course cars, right? And I'll show some of that stuff. But of course, future mobility is also very much about alternative mobility, right? So going more, let's say, with green type of mobilities, right? So that is in the area of mobility as a service. How can you kind of attract people to drive less in their car, or maybe with 4 people in the car instead of 1? That they take a different route, all these kind of things, and of course crypto and all these kind of things, or tokens, or decentralized technologies, can play a role in it, whether it be incentives or all kinds of let's say transparency options, like being able to see what kind of options you have from going from A to B, all these kind of things. And so it is super wide, and so it also covers topics like personal identities, right? So all these mobility services, they want to know who you are, right? So in, let's say 20 years ago, you could travel by train to Groningen and nobody would know or would care, right? But now you kind of use your OV pass, public transport pass, and then of course all kinds of organizations know that you're traveling from A to B, and it's a bit strange in a way. So I think, I mean, I'm quite passionate, for instance, also about self-sovereign identity concepts, and that's also super crucial in mobility, right? So for instance, you should be able, I think, to travel also anonymously if you want to, right? And share data only if you want to, and that's in the context of public transport. But if you rent a car, there's all kinds of digital data being collected. If you drive in your own car, I mean, all these cars are completely filled with software. So, and then at the same time, there's all these sensors and cameras in the public space that you kind of interact with when you're traveling from A to B. So it starts, I think, showing the wideness of what we're talking about. And in each of these areas, decentralization plays a quite important role, because in each of these spaces you don't want to be too dependent on all kinds of centralized players, neither all these big tech companies, or I don't think the government either, right? So that kind of extreme surveillance kind of stuff you don't want to have either on the commercial or on the public side. So you want something between, and I think that's exactly where I think decentralization and Web3 blockchain actually comes into play. At the Dutch Blockchain Coalition, we try to inspire people about these things, and we on the one hand give examples. So I will give a few examples in this session, and then we also, of course, want to make sure we build a couple of things. So let me switch to first example. So this is an example which is the future mobility data marketplace, and it's actually all about sharing data and algorithms that have something to do with mobility. So what I was just talking about, of course, is, yeah, you already noticed there are so many different things. So in this case, it's done with a couple of stakeholders that you see in here. So for instance, the Rijkswaterstaat, so they're very interested in optimizing their highways, and sustainability is very important there as well. And what we did is we reused all kinds of Web3 software to build this marketplace. So I won't tell how much it costs, but it's actually super low because of actually reusing all these open source projects that have been going on in the last couple of years. So one of the main parts that's being reused here is Ocean Protocol, which, so I won't go too much in detail unless you want to know, Adri, but it uses a blockchain in the back end. There's NFTs involved, there's ERC20 tokens involved, there's digital identity involved. But in a way, end users shouldn't really care, because this is about all kinds of different organizations that want to share data sets or algorithms, or they would want to have the combination of the two. And I won't go too much in detail, but for instance, one of the, I think, very, very important characteristics of this platform is that you can, for instance, share camera data like the ministry without actually, you can apply algorithms of third parties to camera data of a ministry without actually sharing that data. And that's super important these days because, of course, you don't want the public offices to kind of share all kinds of camera data with all kinds of third parties around the world. And yeah, before I'll quit and you can maybe ask some questions, Adri, just explaining that this is also based on the Gaia X concepts and platform, which means that it's actually based on a whole set of tooling that allows all kinds of ecosystems to integrate with each other. So for instance, all these data services and algorithms that you see here can also be federated in all kinds of other catalogs. So for instance, this is a kind of a federated catalogs that brings solutions from all kinds of different catalogs like the mobility one into one catalog. But this is a whole range of other ecosystems that are interoperable with this catalog. So for instance, future mobility I just showed, and one of the other catalogs in the ecosystem is, for instance, this one that has all kinds of algorithms that are related to the advanced driver assistance systems. And so, for instance, on a data level, there are all these super high resolution video camera streams from particular roads that can be used for all kinds of algorithms to test ADAS systems. And I can tell all about it, but yeah, this is a bit of a sneak preview, and we're working with all kinds of stakeholders in the mobility space that are very interested in this. So either to share data or to be able to collect data, but for instance also with universities that create all kinds of algorithms that they want to share, or commercial organizations. But of course this is still early phase, so a lot of companies but also public organizations, yeah, they first have to grasp this thing, of course, right? So that takes time, but because we can really show it and explain it, that helps a lot. And if people are interested, we can also demonstrate, for instance, what the role of blockchain is, or how you what it's being used for. And as I said, it's just, I would say, a small piece of the whole puzzle, but quite an important one. Any questions on that, Adri, or?
Oh, I'm just in awe. It's very simple. I mean, having these examples is to me mind blowing. In the blockchain world and people surrounding it, it's all very abstract, right? We're talking. First of the things is what they do. They talk in the future. In the future, we're going to do this, and in the future, we're going to do that, right? But in the future could be 5 years and could be 15 years. So that's very abstract. And what you are doing is you're also showing that there are pilot projects, there is already a platform, there is exchange of data, etc. So in my view, that's already a few years ahead from what the public is seeing, right? So that is very inspiring. Good to see.
Yeah, and to me, actually, I had the exact same feeling when I saw this stuff for the first time, because like I said, what I'm showing now is very much coming, let's say, from the Ocean Protocol world, and actually a lot of people have been working on that for, I would say, 5 years or something, 5-6 years, and that was an ICO a while ago, which kind of collected quite a lot of money. So that a lot of people started building. But and I've been following that from day one. But at a certain point of time, in Europe, this Gaia X initiative was started, and then the Ocean Protocol world kind of realized that this Gaia X beast was kind of doing or trying to do exactly what the Ocean Protocol people were kind of having in mind almost from day one on, at least for a big part. So they kind of donated this whole thing into a new team that completely focused on Gaia X. And the cool thing of Gaia X is that it connects you to all kinds of public organizations, large corporates, huge companies in Germany, especially, and France. And that kind of resulted in actually this initial overall Gaia X portal with all these, let's say, connected marketplaces. And I saw this, I think, 2 years ago from a company called Delta DAO. They're still kind of the leaders of the open source community in Gaia X. And I was super enthusiastic, and I kind of, just kind of proposed to the Ministry of Infrastructure, like, hey guys, we should make sure we build an example here in Holland. And this is kind of the result of it, and it's kind of the other cool thing is that it's all completely open source. So every couple of months, almost automatically, we can add new features and new kind of extensions and improvements. And we now, for instance, also are creating clones, literally, of this environment in Holland. So we are building an exact similar type of marketplace for energy algorithms together with TU Delft and Erasmus University. And there's this clone which focuses on healthcare data. So I think you can have literally hundreds of these different type of marketplaces, each of them focusing on their own audience, right? Because you should have a different language or a different terminology for all kinds of domains, and in this case it's about mobility. But the basic templates and the underlying building blocks, which is the kind of the Web3 stuff for a big part, that's completely reused. And for instance, the screen which I'm showing now here, it's kind of explains that actually for each of these offerings that you see in the catalog, you actually create an NFT. And I think, as also, of course, a bit of a nerd, I think that's super cool, right? Because it's really kind of explaining what also NFTs is about, which is about ownership, and also the possibility to exchange ownership and have, for instance, multiple owners of a data set. There's a lot of, let's say, I think just like you said, I think the real cool thing is that all of these, let's say, buzzwords can kind of come to life together. And if people are not interested, you don't need to talk about the buzzwords or the nerdy things like the different type of tokens and different type of digital identity specs. But to me, those specs are important, right, for interoperability and for broader adoption. But we don't have to talk about it, and I think that's what makes it quite interesting.
Yeah, it's more a means than a goal in itself. At Bling, Interreg project Bling, we have this quote from the movie Fight Club. In Fight Club, they say, first rule of Fight Club, don't mention Fight Club. And we adopted that first rule of blockchain, don't mention blockchain, right? Because it is a means, not a goal in itself. A means with which you can do lots of exciting things. I'm really getting excited by all these things you're showing, and see all kinds of ideas are bubbling up, so that's great. And we have within Bling also an example of mobility and blockchain. It's a kind of ride-sharing app from Belgium. where the idea is that lots of companies, big companies, are in places, industrial areas, etc., where public transport isn't very well. So they want to have students come and work for them, internships, etc. But how are they going to reach them? So they made a blockchain application for ride sharing. And ride sharing in a way that you talked about anonymity and traveling anonymous. But in this case, you want to know the reputation of the driver you're stepping into the car, right?
You can take the risk to join somebody.
Yeah, so they made a ride-sharing app where everything is recorded. All the rides and the people and etc. are recorded on a distributed ledger, and in this way, you are helping the companies to get in contact with potential employees. You're giving the students a way to have an internship at a very interesting company, right? And using the blockchain as a means to realize that. You shouldn't even talk about blockchain there, right? It just functions. It just works, right? And if somebody wants to know, you can talk about blockchain, but it's not relevant, really, right? We're not talking about the internet. The internet is not a goal in itself. It's a means to achieve all kinds of stuff.
I do agree, and I totally. I mean, I more or less say exact same thing as you are saying usually. On the other hand, I do think it is important also that with a certain group of, let's say, stakeholders, we do need to talk about, let's say, the blockchain or the architecture to just make sure we kind of make things more mature and robust and interoperable. To really have things scale on the longer run. So I think we have to do those kind of things in parallel. So I think on the one hand, we just want to make sure we build things that work and that people understand and maybe not need to know at all that there is blockchain involved. And then in parallel, you work on standardization or scalability. And then in parallel, kind of things can evolve to something. Yeah, maybe also good just quickly show a couple of other examples that are kind of quite, I would say, progressive or extremely innovative.
Please do.
Which are inspiring, I think. And I'm using them myself as well. So one of them is called Demo. It's an initiative from the US. And the whole idea is that almost all cars these days are full of software and collecting all kinds of data, but in general, you don't really own the data in your car. A lot of people may not care, but this initiative allows you to also collect that data yourself in an app. I must say, a really good app. And you can either use, let's say, a connection with the app of your car, or you can add an additional aftermarket device. I did that. So I collect everything myself. And then you can share the anonymized data with what they kind of call a data union, which means that I share that data on a weekly basis. And I'm earning about 30, 40 euros a week these days, depending on the rates of the demo coin, of course. But and that's super interesting. And what they then do is then on behalf of, let's say, the data union participants like myself, they are selling that data, and it has all kinds of information that is interesting stuff. And that data could, for instance, be shared on the future mobility data marketplace. So we're actually also talking to those guys, like, would you be interested in maybe also selling the data sets in this future mobility data store. So they're considering that. And I see a lot of also potential issues, by the way, with this solution. So I'm also trying this kind of solutions myself, and I see all kinds of things that are not yet, I would say, perfect yet, or absolutely not yet privacy preserving enough or secure enough. But well, anyway, I always think that you have to try things to really tell if it's good or not good. And in a similar thing is a solution called Netix, and they also did a session for us in the DBC community last year, and they actually have an app on your phone that allows you to put your phone on your desktop and collect the camera data from your phone to, for instance, detect issues on the roads or detect free parking spaces. So, and that's if there's, for instance, free parking space, all these kind of things, they're shared again in the let's decentralized Natix network, and again you're earning points based on all those things that you encounter during driving. So, for instance, for taxi drivers or other kind of people that are on the road all day, it's a new type of income almost. And of course, this is still super early, and I think there could be all kinds of ethical or privacy type of questions. But at the same time, all these initiatives, both Netix and Demo, are very much driven by these the decentralization concepts and ethics, right? So they are very much trying to make this kind of democratic, open, and yes, they're also commercial, but I like to test these things and also show it to others. Because, for instance, at the same time, we're also working together, and that's maybe good to mention, is we're also working together with Dutch tax office at the moment, that actually are also interested in decentralized technologies. Of course, totally different type of companies and a totally different context, but we're now just started a proof of concept, which is called Vehicle Passport, where the Dutch tax office sees the opportunity to use decentralized technologies to collect, or let's say, verified data of cars. And the use case that we're using for this proof of concept is the import of second-hand cars from Germany. There's a lot of fraud in that process, and it's also not super efficient. So we expect that there are all kinds of benefits that could kind of come out of those solutions, but we don't know exactly upfront, right? And and it uses again a lot of ingredients under the hood that are already being kind of used also in solutions like the ones I just showed.
Super interesting. Yeah, but
I can show a lot more, Ali, but I don't want to.
We could be talking about this all evening. No, I mean, I know the feeling that you start in one direction, but the data in the app evolve in another direction. We had something like that. We started with a self-sovereign attendancy application, and we started with that because we wanted to get rid of attendancy lists for organizers who organize a conference or a course or whatever. Right, so we made that, and we saw that the information was much more valuable to the attendees than to the organizer. So we switched direction, right? And that's this also. You start something, you start collecting the data, processing the data, and from one point to the other, it switches. It shows new possibilities. Like you said, it could be a second stream of income for taxi drivers. Who are reporting on how many potholes there are on the road, or new streets, or closed streets, closed routes, etc. Information that they encounter every day, but which is valuable to the rest of the world in a certain way. So that is very exciting to see how these new ways of using the information and sharing the information in a privacy enhanced way could lead to a new kind of economy also.
Yeah, exactly. And again, we have to test all the time, really thoroughly, if it's really privacy preserving, right? Because with all best intentions, it's not the case sometimes, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's also why open source is quite crucial. I think it's actually an advantage because I these days almost start to trust it more than closed source software, because at least I know that it can be tested, right? And otherwise, you just find out a certain time that there was this issue. And so I think with some of these type of solutions, especially with the, let's say, these digital common type of building blocks, yeah, I think we better do it open source and make sure that the whole world's shoot at it to try to break it.
Yeah.
Make sure it's
Open source can be peer reviewed and tested if what they say is really happening inside. And if you have a black box, yeah, there's always a little bit what I call the Facebook effect. Well, we are really going to delete your information. Trust us.
yeah. And to be honest, I think there are a lot of these closed source solutions that are then, of course, commercialized, but they include all kinds of open source pieces. And then, but because it's closed source sold, you can't tell if they update those components properly, right? So I think there's kind of a growing risk with those kind of things,
Yeah,
especially also in automotive. Yeah, you have to be careful with, with those.
yeah, but developing open source is of course a lot harder. I mean, you cannot commercialize, so all the development cost, it cannot be spread over all these customers. You have to develop it now, and you have to put in your hours, and you can only invoice them once, right? So you'll have to have a complete different model
Exactly.
for well, paying the rent, so to speak, and paying
No,
your
but
developers.
yeah. So I mean, of course, business model is crucial. I mean, I always also kind of had my own company for a long time, and I completely understand that people have to pay the bill. So, but I think it's about different type of business models, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I completely believe that there are very, let's say, interesting business models possible with open source. But probably that's something for the upcoming years to, yeah, to figure out.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, great seeing all these examples, and like I said, inspiring. It's good to see all these different parties connecting to each other and sharing insights, which will lead to even bigger and greater ideas, right? Because if you're developing on an island, then your potential is big but still limited. There is a ceiling, and if you have all these parties involved talking to each other, great things will come of that. It cannot be any other way. Okay, great. Yeah, we've been talking about half an hour already. But thank you very much, Harmen, for giving us this insight. And I think there are many people like me who like to know more, like to know more about Gaia X, which you mentioned, more about the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. So what I will do is I will put some links to that information in the comments of YouTube, so people can just use these links to look at that website.
Sure. Maybe one last comment from me, Adri. We've been kind of doing this mobility track in the DBC now for a bit over a year. And we've got all these ideas and we showed some of them, but we know there are 100 more ideas. So actually what we're trying to do in the next half year is to see if we can structure / formalize this collaboration a little bit. We're thinking about something which we call the Future Mobility Alliance, where all kinds of organizations could start, let's say, joining, and we can have all kinds of different project ideas, and participants can kind of sign in for each of these projects, right? And it's a way also to get more funding in, because always people say, yeah, it's so interesting and we should do this more often, blah, blah, blah. But for some stuff, we need more money, and I think everybody will benefit. And I think if people that viewing or hear about it, if they're interested to somehow joining that kind of collaboration, just let me know.
Okay, what I will do is I will share the link to your LinkedIn profile also in the notes, and then people can contact you if they are interested.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you for your time, and we'll speak at another conference or at another meeting of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. Thank you very much, Harmen.
Thanks a lot, Adrie, and talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye. Okay, and that concludes this segment. So we're going to the next segment where a investor will explain a lot about blockchain and what he did in other of our episodes.
Hello, my name is Jeroen Wester, and today's talk will be about the highlights of the meetups that we organized for the BlockchainLab Drenthe. It's a bit of a strange presentation. It's kind of a meta presentation because we're going to talk about our own work. And we're going to have a look back on the meetups that we held since 2017. We will have a look at some facts and figures of the meetups, a few highlights, key findings, and a conclusion. As usual, this is usually the setup for every meetup every presentation during the meetup that I held. So I will stick to this format. We will start with the facts and figures. All right. We organized in approximately 6 years 45 meetups. We started in September 2017, and the reason to start with these meetups around blockchain, blockchain in a wide perspective, it's broader than only purely the blockchain technology, but the reason to start with this meetup presentation is pure curiosity. And we found it a very good motivation to keep on organizing these meetups and giving presentations in these meetups, because we were curious about this topic and we wanted to learn more. And having these meetups scheduled forced us to dive into different areas in this field and to come up with presentations. The first meetups that we organized were on location. So we came together in a location. Here you see a picture in Emmen. Most of the presentations were in Dutch, and the big benefit, of course, of having an on-location presentation is that you have interaction with your audience. The downside is, of course, that everyone has to get to that specific spot. So ups and downs. And there was one unique selling point we had in order to convince people to come to our meetups, we provided them with free pizzas. And I will have to be honest that there were times that these pizzas were cold when we eat them. But usually people liked it, and it was a reason for them to come. Of course, we also hope that the program was a reason to come. And then we were, of course, in the COVID pandemic period, and then we switched to an online format, and it had the big the big advantage of a larger audience, but it also, on the downside, there was a little bit less interaction with the audience. And here you see an image. Adrie met Sebastian Weber, one of the stills of having an invited speaker in such an online presentation. External speakers, very important, because they bring in their own knowledge within this presentation, and sometimes they bring their own audience, and it freshens things up. It's not only the same faces you see every time, but you see also new faces, so that's very good. So when we look at the audience that we had for our meetups, when we were on location until March 2020, we had on average 10, 15 people attending a meetup, which was quite good. We were happy with that. And there were some people in that audience that came more than once. It was a bit of a national, local audience. And then when we switched to online presentations in April 2020, we had on average 15, 20 people watching a live stream live, so at the same time. But then we had this big advantage that the live stream would be provided live longer on, after we had the presentations, and then we would see that the number of views would increase spectacularly compared to the on-location era of our meetups. So 250 was not an absurd number of views that we had. So we had a larger audience, but also a more international audience. Our most viewed stream for the meetups, that was the meetup that we organized in October 2021, and it has 14,000 views, which is exceptional. It has a little bit to do with the topic, of course. There was a very interesting topic which had a lot of international interest. People from abroad were eager to learn the project Energieknip, and we organized that in the municipality of Emmen. And a lot of people were interested in the way how we organized this project. It was based on the IOTA framework, so a lot of people from the IOTA community attended or had a look at this meetup, so that explains the rather high number of views. Very proud of that, of course. Okay, let's go to a number of highlights. When we started first, say this is a slide from a presentation in December 2017. We tried to understand the field. So we were, or maybe I was very obsessed with the classification of the technology, the classification of parts of the technology. And here you see a slide in which we try to come up with a taxonomy of blockchain and distributed ledger technologies, which is of course based on the work of others. We always look around, we try to see what's there and use it. And it helped us to come up with a very important and used almost every week 3 rules for blockchain scheme that we have. That explains, okay, when you want to use blockchain, you need to have multiple parties that need to do with transactions. They don't know each other and they don't trust each other, and there's an incentive to cheat. And we learned that from that early work where we tried to classify the reason for existence of all these different technologies within blockchain. And now when we go a little bit further on, here in June 2018, you see that the presentations become more application driven or application oriented. And here you see a slide for first application, first ideas of the application of this technology, and it's in the field, in the domain of supply chain. And here you see that there is a proposal in which blockchain technology is used to collect facts that are happening in the supply chain and that cannot be changed, or there is a clear fact that cannot be changed, and they are used to make the supply chain more trustworthy. It's a very high over. I'm afraid I need another half an hour to explain it in detail, but that you see that in June 2018, our focus became more, okay, what can you do with this technology? How can you apply it? When we go to September 2019, you see that we come up the notion that this field is larger than only strictly blockchain related technologies. It's connected to fields, encryption fields, and we see that there are very interesting encryption technologies. In this case, encryption technology that's used for e-voting, homomorphic encryption, and there's a kind of surprise, and we talked about magic during that presentation. So we we found out that the field is larger than we initially thought it was. And in January 2020, you see that it goes deeper and deeper, and that we come across this technology called zero knowledge proof, and we spent half an hour on explaining what this technology is. And then there is a bit of a balancing act there. You see that our understanding of this field becomes larger and larger, and it becomes harder and harder for the people in the audience to follow what we try to explain. So the balancing act is, how can you explain complicated technology in an understandable way for your audience? And how can you keep your audience with you? It's hard for deep technology subjects. Then on my last slide here is in this area, in this sector, this segment is application and realization. So in October 2021, that's the slide that I showed you before. That's our most famous most viewed stream. You see that we talk about a project that we started and finished ourselves, the Energieknip, and we see that we closed the loop there. So we started the project, we built the software, we implemented, we rolled it out, we had some results, and then during this meetup we're talking about this project. It's not quite finished then at that time, but it's really about the application of technology. And this project is very important for us because it triggered new projects, and it resulted also in many new presentations that we gave about this topic, and it also gave a kind of a blueprint for the use of blockchain technology. In this case, it's about labeled money that is given away to users in a closed economy. Very nice use case. Not going to repeat it here. You can find it somewhere in our presentations. Okay, what are the key findings? Well, the first one is application rules for us. So that means that for the reason to organize these meetups is that we are very obsessed with how can we apply a complicated technology like blockchain. So our application-oriented attitude pays off by keeping ourselves focused, but also to attract people that want to come to us and to our meetups because they want to learn how you can apply this new technology. And of course, having this application focus gives you the reason to create something. That's probably something that we like. It helps to connect people and the people in the lab. And people like to come for meetups to learn about that. The second thing that we learned is that schedules help. It's good to have these meetups, monthly meetups, where you force yourself to dive into a topic. And we know it's time consuming. Always you think, okay, let me spend an hour in creating my presentation for a meetup. That's not the case. You're usually 1 or 2 days busy diving into the topic, creating the slides, changing them, recording it, the whole thing. But it's good because it forces you to dive into new topics. So meetup schedules help you to get the work done. And the last one, it takes time. It takes time to learn things, to learn the terms in a domain, and to find a focus in a specific domain. Applying new technology is time consuming, and I think it has something to do with the conflicting nature of learning a new domain. It's obviously hard to dive in something, but when you have an application-oriented focus, it's also hard to convince your users to step in and to participate with your activity. So it takes some time to get it all rolling. So it's not strange that we find ourselves now 6 years after we had the first meetup. So the conclusion? Basically the 3 lessons that I already showed you. Application rules is the first one. Schedules help, and remember, it takes time. Okay, last meme. We keep on talking about blockchain. Maybe we know a little bit more about what it means, but there's still a lot of things to discover in this area. So thank you for your time. Hope to see you some other time.
Okay. Yeah, so those were the presentations of today. Let me see if there are any questions. I don't see any questions specifically. Now, then there's one more thing to do. I want to thank Harmen van der Kooi for his time and his enthusiasm in showing us the applications in mobility. Like I said, I put links to the sites he used and to his person, his LinkedIn profile in the description. Thank you to Jeroen Wester for summing up 6 years of meetups in his presentation. It's good to see these old pictures. Now, I don't have a date for the next presentation, the next meetup, because we're going on a break. And after the summer break, we'll see if and how we are going to extend these meetups. Maybe not live, but maybe once a month or every 2 months, an hour long, which you can look up on YouTube in your own time instead of having a fixed time. We'll see. We'll have to work on that. In the meantime, let me be a real YouTuber and ask you to subscribe and like the video, because that'll help the search algorithm in YouTube to find us. For now, I would say have a nice summer and see you around. Have a good day. Thank you for watching.